The 60s is by far one of my favorite time periods for music. And a lot of that comes down to people who should absolutely, under no circumstance, be taking acid, taking a lot of acid. Now, it also spawned the birth of a lot of genres that went on to sound like much different things than what they originally sounded like. Now, I'm talking about songs like Helter Skelter by the Beatles, or songs like Sunday Morning or Femme Fatale by the Velvet Underground. Kind of sounded like some dream pop. I'm also obviously talking about Ronald Reagan with his revolutionary spoken word album that directly influenced Slint, clearly, obviously. And do you know what the 60s had a lot of? Garage music. A ton of the stuff. It's like the modern day SoundCloud in that there's so much of it and most of it sounds the same. But when you find artists that really stand out, it becomes something special. I'm talking about artists like the 13th Floor Elevators or Captain Beefheart. These really crazy, unique garage bands out there. Now, do you know what's even more odd? When you find a crazy, unique garage band with a one-of-a-kind sound that nobody's ever even heard of. Enter Public Nuisance. Public Nuisance formed in 1964 in Sacramento, California, under the name Moss and the Rocks, where they released two different versions of the same single, There She Goes / Please Come Back. Supposedly, the second one had better production. Now, they toured around for a little bit, and in 1967, they changed their name to Public Nuisance. They ended up opening for acts like The Doors and The Grateful Dead, which then scored them a record contract in 1968 with Equinox, which was then run by Terry Melcher. Now, the details get a little hazy around here, but from what I'm gathering of it, Terry Melcher was friends with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who wanted him to work with Charles Manson on his musical outings. Melcher didn't believe in the project like Wilson did, and he backed out. Now, the Manson family murders actually took place in a house that Melcher used to live in. Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski just signed a 1-year lease on that house, and supposedly Melcher was the target of those murders. Now, there's some different stories that I've seen online. Some say that he went into hiding after this. Some say that he was so ridden with guilt that he just quit all of his musical projects. But in the end, all of his projects were dropped, and Public Nuisance's recordings never saw the light of day. That was until 2002, when they were released on a long compilation by Frantic Records under the name Gotta Survive. Now, the record I'm going to be talking about today is the 2012 release of Gotta Survive by Third Man Records, which has the first 12 songs of the initial compilation. Without further ado, let's get right into this thing. Public Nuisance, Gotta Survive, 2012 release, 12 tracks, starting off with Magical Music Box, which opens with this very pretty, quaint music box-like little ditty that's very quiet, almost meant to make you turn up your speakers for when they blast in to the song. And once they come in, it's fantastic. They have so much energy, so much grit, so much passion, really, that you can hear through everything going on. The vocals might turn some off. I wouldn't say they're technically the best. I wouldn't say they're trying to be technically the best. But I'd say the song is a really good starting point to let you know if you're really going to get into what else the album has to offer. It's very catchy. It's a song about taking a risk, somewhat about taking a risk on love, but I think in general and in the band's position, just this long-running band that had been trying for so long, they were really taking a risk on their career and wondering where it would lead. And that was nowhere for like a lot of decades. After this song, we get Strawberry Man, a very singular track, not really a verse-chorus refrain going on here. A couple things repeat, but I wouldn't say anything really lasts long enough to be defined as any of the sorts. It talks a lot about a man named Charlie who is running, who is crying, who is killing. And he doesn't know why, but he does know that he doesn't care for the war. This is very much a protest song in a way that it gets in the head of somebody going out to the war and fighting for something that they're kind of just forced into. What really brings this song together is towards the end, where they say, Charlie don't know why it is he's running, but he's running away from the war. And then they break out into this noisy, chaotic garage rock pound that just sounds so crazy ahead of its time. And even today, it still sounds so manic. It's almost like you're listening to the head of this guy who is killing, crying, and running for reasons that he doesn't even know. I definitely say it's a high point on the album. After that, we have our third track, Ecstasy. The chorus on this track soars one of the highest out of any of them. It's so immediate, so catchy, so invigorating. If there's anything that really holds this track back, I'd say that some of the keyboard sounds maybe aren't as full as they might have been. Still, I don't think it really takes away from the track all that much. I still think it's a very great and immediate track. The drum roll right before the chorus sounds amazing and just launches you into this feeling of ecstasy that I assume they were trying to create with this chorus, and I think it does a very good job. Track 4 here, we have the song Love is a Feeling with a very familiar riff, a very similar sound to the riff on Foxy Lady, but keep in mind this is a very different track. This one has a ton of punk, raw energy to it, a lot of distortion on the riff, a lot of grit to it, very punchy. It's a song about love, how it's a feeling that you can't hide no matter how hard you try. So don't try to hide it, don't try to fight it. It's love. And what really makes this song for me is the blaring guitar that comes in about midway through the song. That really just hangs on this one note, but at no point does it get boring because it's so bright and loud, and it adds new life and creativity, not only in this song, but just throughout this whole project. That's another thing about Public Nuisance in general, is that you would think with a band like this that hasn't been discovered, nobody's picked up, they would kind of just be a little generic garage rock band as most 60s bands are, but no, I know a Public Nuisance song when I'm hearing a Public Nuisance song, and some of the bends on some parts of the song sound a little sloppy, but that's to be expected in a garage rock recording. In fact, throughout this whole project, even though it is a garage rock recording, everything is surprisingly up front. It might not be the best recorded, but you can tell what's going on. Most other 60s garage rock recordings sounded very hazy, and this one is very much an exception. I think most of it sounds pretty listenable for today's standard. Up next, we have the song Holy Man. By far one of the craziest songs, if not the craziest song on this entire project. The wobbly, frantic guitar sounds really psychedelic and weird. The lyrics talk of this very spiritual man, personifies the spiritual man. It is from the perspective of the spiritual man, and it might be David Houston, the lead singer's own spirituality, but that's really beside the point. I'm really more intrigued by the way this song sounds, and the guitars really bring together that aesthetic that he was going for. Just a really wild and weird track, again, and definitely one of my favorites. After that, we have the song Gotta Survive. Not one of my favorites, not one of my least favorites. It's pretty okay. The instrumentation in the verse is pretty alright. The harmonica is definitely a nice touch. The chorus soars pretty high with a roaring guitar that comes in. The one thing I would say is that the lyrics are a little vague, and when he starts doing this, I gotta survive kind of refrain, it doesn't really feel earned because I don't even really know what he's talking about. What exactly do you have to survive? The other parts of this song seem to be talking about love. Again, a pretty common theme throughout this album. Which makes sense. These are young kids experiencing these coming-of-age emotions for the first time, and they're powerful and heavy, and I'd say, for the most part, they get those emotions across very well. So this track, it's pretty good. And it's the title track, so clearly they thought something of it. Next, track 7, Small Faces. Easily one of, if not my favorite track on here. It is everything that Public Nuisance did well at their best. Super catchy. Super raw punk energy coming through it. The drums, which I haven't talked about a whole lot throughout this project, but throughout every song, they're mostly super punchy, super crisp, super raw and loud. And they do their job just as well on this song. The riff on this one is nasty with a lot of grit on it. And again, it's just another great Public Nuisance garage rock song with amazing harmonies on it too. It's super well written, super good tune, super earwormy, something that'll get stuck in your head. I would definitely put this as a high point on the album, which is unfortunate because I think after this song is where the album starts to slow down a little bit. Luckily, it does pick up steam towards the end, but the next song, Saber Thing, is kind of underwhelming. So for things I like about Saber Thing, I'd say the drums are pretty steady and a little bit varied from what we're normally seeing on the album. There are definitely some musical intersections that they go on to that kind of sound like the Beach Boys at some point, but the tune on this one is just weak, man, and bland. I don't really see it going anywhere, and the keys on this get so annoying after a while. I would definitely say this is one of the weaker cuts, which then leads into what is probably my least favorite song on the entire album, I Am Going. Super horrid riff that starts this song off. It has this weird start-stop effect that I don't even know if they were doing that, but it just sounds like it's cutting and jumping, and it sounds so awkward and unfinished in that one riff that once it coasts into the song, I'm already a little turned off. Now, the melody is, again, another problem. There are some good parts right next to some really awkward parts. This song is very clearly sang by a different person. I'm not really sure who, because every single member of Public Nuisance is credited as doing vocals on this album in the liner notes, so I'm not sure who was singing, but the vocals aren't anything special, and the tune doesn't really do anything for me at all. And this song restarts 3 times. It just fades out and then restarts, and every time it restarts, it gets back to that horrid riff, and I hate it, and it sucks. Next song, we have Evolution Revolution. Again, not one of my favorites, but it's not terrible. It's a little goofy, as is I Am Going, but there are some cool, thick bass parts to it, and the bass, again, sounds very thick and cool, I guess, is the only way I can really describe it. None of it really hits me as anything too oppressive, especially in the grander scheme of Public Nuisance, who was really doing some very cool things. And there are parts of the song where the guitars sound really scratchy and off, and it doesn't really hit my ears too well. Again, not the worst, but I definitely don't consider it a highlight. Thankfully, right after this song, we pick back up with the track 7 or 10. Very standout track on this album, not only because it's a great song, but because it's an acoustic ballad, mostly acoustic. There's some soft percussion in the back, but everything on this song just sounds so great. Most of this album is recorded in like a 60s garage kind of way, which doesn't lead to the best recording, especially nowadays, but this song in particular just sounds immaculate. It's so pretty, so sparse, so sparing, yet so powerful. I'd say that maybe some of the lyrics are a little corny or even nonsensical, but it more makes up for it in tone and aesthetic. It seems to be a song about lost love, a breakup. Really seems like the singer is the one who did the breaking up. And it's somber yet beautiful. I really dig this track, and I think it is definitely one of their best. The last track on here, Thoughts. Pretty good closer. The harmonica is definitely a nice touch on the verse. The guitars in the verse sound really jangly, kind of bright in contrast to some of the maybe scratchier, drier tones on the album. The chorus has this really fuzzy, mysterious sounding guitar all throughout it. And it goes in a lot of really cool melodic directions that I like. I'd say towards the end it kind of falls off on some weird detours. But overall, the song is really great and a really great way to end this project in general. Just finish really strong. Before I forget, ladies and gentlemen, Public Nuisance consisted of David Houston on vocals, lead guitar, keyboards, and harmonica. Ron McMaster on drums, percussion, and vocals. Pat Minter on bass and vocals. And Jim Matthews on rhythm guitar and vocals. I know they were all credited for vocals, but David Houston is the lead singer of this band. And there we have Public Nuisance's 2012 release of Gotta Survive. I think it is a fantastic hidden gem that more people should absolutely know about. It's really strange to see a record like this get passed up in general, but it makes sense why not a whole lot of people would know. And that's the whole reason I'm doing this, so more people are aware of this band here. I think they were just on to some really great ideas, and it's a shame that they never really saw the light of day in their time. 60s garage was a very one-note genre that not a whole lot of people found success in. You'll even find some of the cooler songs like Mr. Genie Man go severely under the radar. Not a whole lot of people are aware that they even exist. If you get the time, be sure to check these guys out. If you're into garage music, maybe some White Stripes or any other Jack White side project, I think you'll dig on this. I'd really just recommend it to anybody who's trying to hear something new and unique and who can appreciate people innovating or trying to innovate in their own time. And that's all for the video, guys. I'm James Robinson, and this is my channel here. I'd really appreciate it if you guys left a like, a comment, maybe even subscribed. That'd be pretty tight. And hopefully I'll see you guys here next time for another video. Peace.
Yeah.